A very good morning, children. How are you all? So today we are going to see a new lesson, which is the Kabuliwala, which was written by one of the famous writer from India, that is Rabindranath Tagore. So he also received Nobel Prize for his writings in the year 1913. In the year 1916, also 1915, he was also awarded knighthood, but because of the Jallianwala Bagh, where so many Sikhs were killed by the Britishers, so he gave it back to them. So, and he wrote some famous poetry like Gitanjali. Okay, so now the story which we are going to read, okay, it is also written by Rabindranath Tagore. So let's go into the lesson. All of you open the page number 62 and we shall get into the lesson. So all of you open the page number 50 and then we'll get into 62 and then we'll go to the lesson, the Kabuliwala. So here this lesson is narrated by a person, like now we'll take him as a father, right? A father is narrating the lesson. So here my 5-year-old daughter Minnie is a chatty girl and likes to talk all day long. So here the father is talking about his daughter and he says that his daughter is a chatty girl. That means a girl who likes to talk very long, like who always keeps on talking, and even a day long. She is very much interested in talking. It took her about a year after being born to acquire the talent for language. So it took her a year, just an year to acquire in the sense to attain, to get command over the language, the talent of the language, how to speak. And also now she acquired a very good talent. And from that time, that means from the time she learned talking, she did not waste a wakeful moment. The time she was awake, she never stopped talking. She never ceased talking. Okay, she never ceased talking. She always kept on talking and talking, and she never remained silent. Whenever she was awake, whenever she was in conscious, she always talked. Often her mother chides her to keep quiet, but I can never do that. Sometimes her mother, she scolds her, come on child, be quiet, don't talk too much. So she tells her to be quiet. But whereas as a father, he could not do that. He never told the child to keep quiet. Seeing the girl mute even for an instant seems so odd and unusual to me that I find it unbearable. So the father cannot see her child mute, right? That means without talking. He always wanted her to talk, and he could not even bear a single moment. Okay, he could not tolerate a single moment. Unbearable, not able to tolerate. Okay, so not able to tolerate even a single moment. Okay, single moment where she keeps her mouth shut. She doesn't talk. Now this man feels that time as unbearable. Okay, that's why my conversation with Minnie is often feisty. So her daughter Minnie, right? Her daughter name is Minnie, and whatever the conversation, whatever the talking he does with that, it keeps him very lively. Feisty in the sense here, lively. So always the day will be completely live for that particular father when he sees his daughter talking. So daughter keeps on talking. She never keeps calm. Okay, and father likes her talking, and always he doesn't want her child to be muted, to stop talking. So he always, and even he cannot tolerate her being quiet. One morning as I had just started writing the 17th chapter of my novel, Minnie walked into the room and began chatting as usual and said, "See, Baba, Bhola was saying that when elephants lift water with their trunks and spray it from the sky, it rains." So one day morning, the narrator, right, the father, he was writing the 17th chapter of a novel, and the father was a novelist, so he writes the novel. So when he writes the novels, he was writing around 17th chapter of the novel, and when he was writing the novel, Minnie walked into the room. Who was Minnie? Minnie was daughter, right? She walked in the room and she, as usual, right, the work she does regularly, she came there, she sat with the father and she started talking. And she said that, "See, Baba in the sense here, father." She was calling him Baba in the sense father. "See, Baba, Bola was saying that when elephants lift water with their trunks and spray it from the sky, it rains." So Bola maybe her friend and all. He said that when elephants take water from the river or somewhere, and then they lift their trunks and sprinkle the water, spray the water. That is the time when it rains. That is the time when it rains. Rains from the and all these elephants are in the sky. They take the water with their trunks and spray, and that is how we get the rains. And that is what Bola said to Minnie. So now Minnie said the same thing to her father. Dear, oh dear, Bola can speak such nonsense. He can rant day and night without making any sense. He said that, baby, dear, see, Bola can speak such a nonsense. He can keep on talking the foolish words which doesn't have any sense in them. Okay, which doesn't have any meaning in them. So he can talk those foolish words. He can talk the words which doesn't have any meaning. He can rant. He can rant day and night. He can talk the nonsense words day and night, and that doesn't make any sense. He always keeps on talking where the words which he speaks doesn't have any sense. Now, what about the elephants which are there in the sky and they lift the water and spray it down and it comes out as a rain? So all these are the nonsense. They are all the foolish words. They are not at all true. That is what father said to Minnie. Stopping her game abruptly, Minnie ran to the window which overlooked the main road and began calling out at the top of her voice, Kabuliwala, oh Kabuliwala. So now she was talking to her father. Now it's like a game to them, and she stopped the game abruptly. So suddenly she stopped abruptly, in the sense suddenly on the spot she stopped the game and she ran to the window. She ran to the window and she overlooked on the main road. So she overlooked over the window onto the main road, and now she began calling at the top of her voice, like in the sense as loud as she can. She called, oh Kabuliwala, oh Kabuliwala. She was shouting. That means a Kabuliwala was going from there. She was calling him. A tall, shabbily clothed Afghan street vendor. So here the Kabuliwala is a tall person and poorly dressed, worn out, faded dress. Okay, he was wearing, and then he was an Afghan person, and also he was a street vendor. So he sells something in the streets. He goes across the streets and then he sells door by door. And also he has a turban on his head, okay, and also a bag over his shoulder, and then he had some dry grapes in his hand, okay, raisins, right, what we call as kishmish. So he has some kishmish in his hand, and he was passing by the street slowly, okay, he was selling them. I have no idea what flashed to my daughter's mind at the sight of the man. So she called Kabuliwala, and then when Kabuliwala looked at her, she rushed into the home. Now father could not understand what actually ran in the mind of the child. What actually ran in the mind of the child? She ran into the room. Here the word which is used here is dashed. She dashed in the sense here, moved with a sudden speed. So she called him, and within no time she ran into the room with a sudden speed, and she did not even wait for the response from the Kabuliwala. However, the Kabuliwala turned around and he gave a smile, and then he approached the house because somebody called to buy something from him, because he's a vendor, he's a street vendor who sells something. So she dashed inside, okay, and she had a childish fear. Now, why this girl ran inside? The father is telling the reason. The reason is that this child has a childish reason, right? This girl has a childish reason that the people, okay, the Afghan man, he has a bag, right? He has a bag, and there are some children living in that particular bag. He takes the children and keeps them in the bag. Okay, there are several children like herself in the bag. Okay, and she had that fear he might take this girl also and keep him in his bag. So, and Kabuliwala came to the house and he kept on asking who called him. So he has to leave his writing forcibly, right? He doesn't have any interest to leave his writing the novel and all. He forcibly left that and he went out, and because the man was there, so he had to make some purchases, and he also talked to him for a couple of minutes. Okay, for 2 minutes he also talked to him, and then finally he was about to leave the house, and the Kabuliwala asked, "Where is the little girl who called me? Where is that little girl who called me?" To remove Minnie's unfounded fear. So to remove Minnie's unfounded fear, unfounded in the sense here, fear without a strong reason. A fear without a strong reason. So there was no strong reason, because she was only thinking that this Kabuliwala carried the little children in the bag. That was the only fear. She could not come out. Okay, so to remove this fear from Minnie's mind, father called her from inside the house. Okay, now when he called, "Come on, Minnie, come here," and then slowly she came out. And she came there nervously, with anxiousness, and she was disturbed. Okay, she was worried, apprehensive. So she came there, and he stood by the leg of the father, and she pressed herself and caught the leg of the father. So she held him tight, and she looked Kabuliwala suspiciously with a kind of doubt. She was looking at him with a doubt, and also she was looking at the Kabuliwala, and also she was looking at the bag. Okay, then you know what Kabuliwala did? He kept his bag, he had his hand in the bag, and took out some raisins, and also some apricots. Raisins in the sense here, kishmish. Apricot is a fruit like neredi pandu, right? Dried neredi pandu. So he took out some apricots and also dried kishmish, and then he gave it to Minnie. But Minnie refused to take them. Minnie did not take them. She refused to take them, and she pressed herself against the knees of father, and she held him tightly. And when he gave those things, the suspicion, the doubt which was in Minnie's mind, it got doubled. And this is how the first meeting of the Kabuliwala was with the Minnie. So both of them had a first meeting like this. A few days later, so she was very much anxious, she was nervous to meet, and she did not even take the nuts, or she did not take the raisins or anything from apricot from Kabuliwala. She did not accept them, and father gave him money, and also he sent him. So now that was the first meeting of the little girl with the Kabuliwala. After a few days later, father was leaving his home in the morning, because he has some important work to do. He saw his tiny daughter. Tiny in the sense here, very little, little daughter, right? She was sitting on the bench next to the door. She was sitting, at the door on a bench, and she was talking to a person non-stop. And father looked out and was surprised to see that was Kabuliwala. She was talking non-stop to the Kabuliwala, who was parked next to the feet and listening to her. So he was sitting at the feet of the child, and he was listening to Minnie, right? He was listening to Minnie. So, and also what he was doing, he listened her with a grin and interjecting now and then in a broken Bengali to give his opinion. So at the same time he was grinning, in the sense he was laughing. He was giving a smile. Okay, he was moving his lips backward, and also he was giving a smile, showing his teeth. That is what grin means. Okay, and interjecting, he was talking in between. So he was discussing with the girl. So whenever he wanted to talk something, he was talking to her in between. Okay, with the broken Bengali words, because he was Afghani, he doesn't know Bengali that great. So he was interrupting her. He was talking in between with the broken Bengali. Minnie had never found a more patient listener. So this man was listening to her with more patience, right? Even though there was a lot of work and all, so he was quite nice to sitting there calm and quiet and listening to Minnie. So Minnie never had such a listener who listens with a great patience. And also he noticed that there were some nuts, and also there were some raisins, okay, and that was tied up at the end of her sari. She was wearing a small sari. At the end of the sari, she tied some raisins and nuts. Upon discovering this, when the father saw this, Okay, he asked Kabuliwala, within no time he asked the Kabuliwala, why did you give all this to her? Come on, Mr. Kabuliwala, why did you give all this to her? Why did you give the raisins and nuts to her? Okay, and please don't do it again. Please don't give anything to her. And with that, he took a half a rupee coin. He took a half a rupee coin, that is 50 pies. That is 50 pies, and gave it to the Kabuliwala. And the Kabuliwala took the money without any hesitation, without any second thought, without any doubt, without even stopping him. No, sir, I don't want the money. So he don't say all these things. He simply took that, took this 50 pice coin and kept in his bag. So what happened after that? We'll see tomorrow. Until then, see you all. Have a great day.